Captain John Denton has been deleted.
Hello, welcome to episode 134 of Chet and John's Reassuringly Finite Gaming Playlist. My name's John Denton. With me, as always, is Chet Roivas.
Hello.
This week is a shorter episode due to the fact that we're just getting swamped with the amount of games that are out, which is a good thing in many ways, but it also means the amount of time we're spending on each game is longer. So 2 top 5 lists, 5 being the game we played the least, 1 being the game we played the most. You know how it works. Let's do it.
Okay, all right. My number 5 is a game called Fluster, Cluck on the PlayStation 4. And I don't. This is quite lame. I don't really know if I can talk about this. It's not out till next week. It's a Sony exclusive download only thing, and I was asked to review it, and I had to go back and say I can't review this. Primarily because it's a 4-player local co-op game, and I wasn't prepared to mortgage my gaff to buy 3 more PS4 controllers. And I have to say, it really does look like a steaming pile of shit. I shouldn't pass judgment on it because it really, but it really did look quite terrible. Although I've only played it in 1 player, there's no online at all, and yeah, just on your own, it's less than fun. Although I have to say that I do suspect.
What type of game is it?
I don't. It's like bumper cars. I don't. I mean, one thing I will say about it is I really like the way it begins. The mechanics are explained in the form of this really brash advert where some guy's just shouting it at you, and it actually feels like quite a novel way to start a game. And it fleetingly makes it look like the game might be quite interesting. It's aside from the fact that it's bumper cars. It's like you fly around. You've got these little flying spaceship things. You fly around small areas collecting ingredients, cows and stuff, and dropping them into these things called chickenizers, which turns them all into chickens. There are weapons like exploding cows you can plant. Imagine a really primitive Mario Kart with no track. Battle mode from Mario Kart, but very uninventive. Like just a very uninventive version of that. Simplistic controls. And no online. I don't know. It just seems extraordinarily poor. It feels like this is the product of the evolution of XBlig. I know a lot of people were expecting Sony to sort of come up with an iteration of. I don't think there's any trophies, so that's why I started to feel like it was it felt unofficial. Maybe there's going to be trophies that unlock when the game comes. I don't know. Don't listen to me. It's a 4-player co-op game, and I didn't play that, so. I don't know, but who am I kidding? It looks really shit, but I'm not going to pass judgment on it. I'm going to try and play it with 4 people if I can. That will never happen. I don't even know why I bothered mentioning it.
Cluster. What's it called?
Fluster, Cluck. I mean, it's out next Tuesday, I think, so keep an eye for reviews. I am not expecting high scores, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I've never heard of it at all, which is unusual for PS4 downloadable games. You normally know what they are, but
I kind of wish I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, fair. All right. Okay, my number 5 then is a game called Hoplite on Android. This is a weird one. I was just on the Google Play Store, and one of the things it does sometimes is it highlights recommendations from other people, which doesn't sound massively unusual, but it always does it really far down, so I've only ever seen it a couple of times. And John Blythe had actually given this game a 5-star review, and there's like a little sentence of his review that he'd written, said it was like a really tight little game or something. So I was like, oh, download that, why not? It's free. And yeah, I haven't really played that much of it, but it is very cool what I have played. It's going to be one of those ones that's kind of difficult to describe. Basically, you play as a little chap on a hexagon grid, and you can move him to anywhere on the hexagon grid, and then there'll be gaps. The space of a hexagon wide, if that makes sense. And you can jump over that gap if you've got enough energy. Every single board every level has a certain amount of energy at the bottom. And it's just it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle game basically. You have to figure out how to get to the exit on each of these levels just by using the rules that the game establishes quite early on. Quickly there'll be enemies, so there might be archers, and you can click on them and see their range, like in Advance Wars, and you click on an enemy and you can see their range. It works like that.
Yeah.
So you've got to move around that, and then maybe there'll be one bit that you'd have to jump over to get to the exit, stuff like that. There's other enemies that you can run past and stab, and I think, I haven't played enough. Maybe that's how you get more energy. I'm not 100% sure on that because I haven't played enough. But yeah, a cool game. I don't know where it came from or what it is, really. You know, it's not something that I researched or looked up. It just came to me via those means. But I'll play more, I think, because it's one of those games that's definitely suited for being on a phone and isn't all in-app purchasey horrible yet. Yeah, it's probably a game that I'm gonna stick with. I think it's nicely designed. It's a cool idea. It's a game that works well on the phone. So phone games have been pissing me off for the last 12 months, really, apart from the occasional good one. So it's nice to play something that feels a bit honest.
iOS?
Probably. They tend to be. There's very rarely Android only, aren't they?
I don't know. It's kind of, they're becoming more and more prevalent now.
But it is bigger, isn't it, in terms of install base?
Yeah.
But,
is it?
Yeah, if it will, I think probably because it's across multiple phones, isn't it? It's not just Samsung.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Title was
Hoplite. But the icon, the icon is the icon of like a gladiator helmet, like a Roman centurion helmet.
Right.
So you play as that. I don't know why. That's just what. Yeah.
Weird. All right. Weird. Okay, my number 4 is a game called Chariot on the Xbox One. I've spoken about this a little bit over the past few weeks, and I've smashed it to bits now, and I've been quite careful not to rip it for not being the game I wanted it to be, or rather, the game it starts out as, because it's not the same game after that. But yeah, after playing a whole lot more, I think it's too taxing,
right.
And it's not taxing in a way that is even close to being gratifying. Also, because of that difficulty, it's the kind of game that demands a lot of time. I mean, it starts out so accessibly, but before long, levels take an hour, and you have to go through them multiple times through different entrances to find different exits and collectibles, and you're spending a large amount of time just failing, and that's really exhausting because the physics. Have you played this yet?
No, but I have actually watched the Giant Bomb Quick Look today, in fact, because I had a feeling you might talk about it again. So now I know what it is and what it looks like and kind of how it works at a basic level.
Okay, what did they say about it? Is that I've never seen one of those? Do they critique?
It's one of those things where they kind of talk to each other about the first sort of 40 minutes to an hour and run through the mechanics and stuff. It's quite a good thing. It's like somewhere between a preview and a review. So yeah, they don't go into full-on review territory with it, but yeah, they're quite good, those things.
Okay, but I mean, the one thing that is incredible about the game is the physics. At times, they almost feel too good because basically the main barrier to success is that levels increasingly, as the game goes on, start being built upwards. And two of you, or one, you can play it, 1 or 2 player, but I played it mostly in co-op, and 2 of you are trying to jump around on these tiny, awkward platforms with this fecking 2-wheeled coffin, trying to keep your balance and not have the chariot pull one of you off or knock another one off the side of the platform. It's really quite difficult. You can slacken or tighten the rope as well, and those are tricks that you need to employ later on to get up very steep slopes and stuff like that. It's so well made, the game. And that physics model is a marvel, like I said. But when you make the tiniest mistake, you fall, and then you have to go and do it all over again.
Yeah,
and the smallest of errors, and you fall. And to add insult to injury, for some reason, if one of you falls, the camera follows that player and not the one who hasn't fallen. So there are loads of bits where, for example, you can't get a chariot past a door or something. So you have to run through a little maze to hit a switch, release the chariot, and then run back through the maze to leap back onto it. And some of those sequences are very long-winded, but so if one of you falls off, and you basically can't continue because the camera follows the person falling whilst the other player is still alive. It's just not a wise decision. I have no idea why they did it. Similarly, there's this over-reliance on suicide, and I couldn't work out whether that was intentional or not, because, I mean, sometimes it blatantly isn't. I mean, I spawned into sort of scenery a couple of times. Obviously, that wasn't a design decision, but sometimes you'll get locked behind doors after pressing a switch by mistake, and you can't do anything, so you have to just kill yourself.
Right.
Or you'll go and investigate a location, you'll jump down to go and have a look if there's any treasure down there, and there's no escape, there's nowhere to, you can't get back up, so you're just like suicide. Perhaps that's all intentional, but again, the penalty is that you lose progress. Go back and do it again, and that just, wore me down. It is pretty amazing that it works on co-op and single player. It's a very different game on your own. It's much slower and it's far more difficult, but it does work, and that's not a small thing. I think that's worth praising because it feels so built for co-op, and yet it does work rather well on your own. And the gameplay is really varied. Sometimes that chariot is a pendulum, sometimes it's a roller coaster to jump on, and sometimes it's a battering ram, but it just demands way too much time. If you're looking for a really rock-hard and time-consuming co-op game, there's a fairly good chance that you might absolutely love this, but my main issue is that death always felt cheap to me, just kind of flippant, go back and do it again. You know, just dying too much just ruined the experience for me. It's always hard to know. You know, I'm not saying the game's too difficult. Well, yeah, that's what I am saying. The game's too difficult, and it just didn't. I couldn't handle dying thousands and thousands of times and being sent back anyway. So yeah, it's well made and very enjoyable at first, but the punishing nature and the long-winded nature of it, just I don't have the time or the inclination at the moment.
Yeah, I must download it before it goes off the Games with Gold thing on Xbox One. Just even if I only do a few levels at the beginning, just to enjoy the physics of it, and that's it. It's got to be worth doing.
It's the beginning's really entertaining. It's not the game that it's not the game you think it is though. I kind of wanted the first game, and I didn't want to criticize it too much for not being that, but you have to really like dying, and I don't know. I don't have a million years either. The levels are so big. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very well made game though. I will say that.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Talking of well-made games, my number 4, ridiculously, is PT, a game that I thought I would never go back to, but did. My brother came to visit the weekend that's just gone, and he hadn't seen a bunch of PS4, Xbox One games. So we went through the usual suspects, UFC, all that sort of stuff. But I suddenly remembered, I said to him, do you want to see the most fucked up scary game of all time? And he was like, yeah. So, yeah, I just stuck him on PT in the dark with headphones on and watched as the first big jump scare happened to him, and that was hilarious to watch. But then quickly, he managed to get to basically where I was myself. We deleted the save and started again. And so I just thought, fuck it, and we just sat there and played through the rest of the game together. He actually controlled it, and I just watched. So technically, I guess I haven't played PT, but you know, all you're doing is moving the sticks to move around the corridor. So I played it, and I couldn't believe how much worse it got. I just couldn't believe how much worse it got. By the time it finished, I say we finished it. The game actually finishes, the demo, whatever you want to call it, actually finishes with this really, really almost impossible to solve puzzle that involves a bunch of very specific circumstances and actions that you have to do just to unlock the very, very end. So we didn't actually manage to do that. We just had to watch the last minute or so on YouTube. But apart from that, yeah, we got to the end of the game, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and more horrible, to the point where when I went to bed, I felt physically sick. I had like anxiety, stomach problems, and I couldn't sleep, and it felt like all of my nerves all through my body were jank. It was just utterly horrendous. I'm so glad that I got through it, but I couldn't. I was just sort of reeling and genuine. Like every time you went in a corner, I was like, I don't want there to be anything there that I don't want to see. And there quite often was the fridge. I mean, you've never seen anything like it. I thought that I'd just gone soft, but I'll talk about a couple of games later, which made me realise that I haven't. It's just that it just gets in. It's just got under my skin. It's like a cliche to say that, but it really felt like it did. We talked about it loads before on how it works and what it is, but I've never experienced anything like it.
Yeah, I have no desire to go back to it, but over the last few weeks, anyone with a PlayStation 4, I know a couple of people who've just bought PlayStation 4, so I'm saying, you've got to download the PT demo. But I don't want to go and play it ever again.
No. I've just lost for words. And I was glad to see it did the same thing to my brother as well. I think he was slightly tougher than me. He didn't have to pause it every 2 seconds like I did, but yeah, unbelievable.
I never want to play that again. But I do wonder if the finished Silent Hill is going to have even a tiny amount of that kind of atmosphere, because it's going to be incredibly tough to take if it does.
I really don't know what they're going to do with that. I just don't. Yeah, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs that in their life. And the subject matter is so dark as well.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it leaves me reeling and shell shocked to the point where I just sort of start uttering single syllables like I was just doing there. So yeah.
All right. Well, you did. It was your own fault because you put it on, not your brother. So.
Yeah, but it was funny when the lady shocked him the first time and watching him. It was funny as fuck. You get what you. I don't know. It's PT. PT is terrifying.
Okay, all right. Well, my number 3, I assume, is on your list somewhere. It's Alien Isolation.
It's my number 3. So that's handy.
Well, I mean, you might as well go first.
Okay, so probably about 5 hours in now. I know it's a very long game, so I would consider myself still quite early on, even though it feels like I've been in the game for ages. And obviously, the game, you can spend a long time in that game achieving absolutely fuck all, can't you? Just because you might, you might lose your save, or you might just spend that whole time stuck in a box or a locker.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It still wasn't really doing it for me until I started getting to the point where I felt like the game started to be the game that it actually is, if that makes any sense. Whereas I started really having to go not head on, because that's never a good idea, but actually do stuff where the alien is, and it started to feel like it wasn't scripted anymore and it was happening more organically. And all the stuff with like the art design, I love the atmosphere. The sound design is phenomenal, including the trainer squeak that you sometimes get when you're moving. It's just what a great touch that is. The alien itself is obviously incredibly well animated and heavy and just horribly nasty. It doesn't scare me, the game, because it doesn't do what a PT does to me psychologically, but obviously it's incredibly tense, especially when he was like hiding under a table and the thing's pacing back and forth and its tail's knocking over bins and shit in the rooms. The problem I have is I know how long it is that people are telling me that it's clocking in like 25 hours, and realistically, I don't know if I want to be spending 25 hours hiding in lockers. I don't know. That's my problem so far. But it's an incredibly impressive game in so many ways, and I don't know, there's some missteps along the way, but it'd be completely ill of me to really talk with any level of judgment, because I'm just not far enough into the game on a whole to offer my final thoughts. But I'm liking it more now. It might be a few weeks before I go back to it once the schedule's cleared up, but it ain't going anywhere. It's staying on the PC for sure.
Well, I think you should definitely 100% finish it. I finished it earlier this week or late last week. And while the issues that I've spoken about previously are still a problem for me, and they did occur again later, some of the issues that I've had.
Stuff where you just couldn't help yourself but die.
When you have to die in order to figure out that you can't go in that area of the room. You know, it's stupid shit. But all of those problems are completely meaningless, because I'm sure I said this to you, if I was reviewing it, I would have found it very hard not to give it a 10 out of 10.
Wow.
Because it's an amazing thing. And for the final few hours, for the final 6 hours, I'd say, I just did not want it to end. I'd say it's closer to 20 than 25, but I mean, like you said, it's a weird game to put a time limit on, because if you're playing it correctly, you are hiding quite a bit. I have heard complaints that it's overlong, and I don't really get that. I think it's compelling right until the end, and I think that's a real testament to the writing, because although I've had some issues with some of the writing, and despite the fact that the game is just Ripley getting thrown into shit situation after shit situation, and you're also just running around and pressing buttons and hiding and pressing buttons and hiding, and yet I was gripped for the final stretch, especially for the final 6 hours or so. Even though it does get pretty hokey a few times when they're trying to concoct problems for Ripley, So there's some annoying bits where people just become either supernaturally incompetent all of a sudden, or they suddenly turn evil. But that's just the genre, I guess. Those are just things that you have to accept. And the actress that plays Amanda Ripley is excellent. Needless to say, as the game goes on, she gets more and more frazzled and distressed. But it's not overplayed. And by the end of the game, it sounds like she's a different person. Amanda Deck, I think that's right. I think that's the name of the actress. So terrific, because roles like that are so often overplayed, and I thought I was really, really impressed. It really made the final few hours, it really added to the final few hours. Okay. Briefly, additional things that I encountered, problems, or rather things I really do think that it should save after cutscenes. You can play for 20 minutes, sit and watch a pivotal bit of plot cut in a cutscene, move to a whole new location, and can play for a bit and then die, and then you have to go back to before all of it. I think that's a bit much.
Yeah.
Later on, that actually doesn't happen. It starts saving after some of the cutscenes later on, but I don't think it should have happened. Yeah, it does, yeah, later on. But in the beginning, I'm not sure why. I don't think it should have happened at all. It also, sometimes when it sort of broadens a little bit, allowing you to move around and do things your own way a little bit, it benefits you to go back to a save station that you've already used to resave. But the game knows this and makes it very difficult for you to do that. So the alien will just start behaving really unusually, like overly aggressively, and spends way too much time patrolling that specific location for minutes at a time. Those bits are really cheap. Those threaten to really wind me up, because it's just trying to prolong the game. I'm not sure, but those were really frustrating. But I don't care, because all of the problems melt away when you look at what they've achieved on the whole. I mean, I really hope they get a chance to make another one of these, and I just hope that it does amazingly well, because its influences are all over it, and yet it manages to feel brand new. I also think part of the brilliance of it is the alien is not actually in it that much. Any more or less, and it would have gone right off the boil, because you're constantly hoping that it doesn't show up. But there are long stretches where the alien is not really a threat to you, and you spend the whole time hoping that it's not there and waiting, sort of dreading it returning. I think that's a really wise move, and it's just such a beautifully rendered universe. I felt like I spent 20 hours somewhere else. Visually as well, I mean, it's no surprise to see, there were moments when it looked like the Xbox One was really struggling. Because it looks so good. And later on, when you leave the ship and you're in outer space, I've never seen it done better. I've never felt more like I was stuck in outer space. They create really weird, brilliant sort of visual distortions from the light and your fatigue, and the sound when you're outside the ship and you can hear the pressure around your face. It feels like you're staring death in the face, which is exactly what you're doing. And as in the rest of the game, you're trying to hurry whilst also being very careful that you don't die. It's just the tension. I think the final 6 hours just cemented it as a bit of a masterpiece for me. And the audio it deserves to win every award that it's eligible for. And I love, towards the end, layers of music start building as you move towards the climax. It's so, so good. It's just a hell of a creation. It's really bold, and I can't get over how exciting it is. Particularly in the second half. I just hope they all get rich off it. They deserve to get rich. An amazing video game, truly.
Well, that's kind of inspired me to stick with it, really.
I think you will get to a point at which the game makes perfect sense. I don't know when it was for me, because the problems just don't matter. There's flaws, there's design kits, but they're like, they make no difference, because look what they've done. Look at the game they've made. I can't believe I know it's never going to happen, but boy, I'd love to be able to have the time to go through it again on hard. It's so good. It's the final 6 hours, unbelievable. I mean, I loved it. I loved it. I'm pretty sure I would have got into whatever potential arguments would involve me giving that game a 10 out of 10, because I was blown away.
Wow.
It's not perfect, but
it's
also kind of perfect.
Okay, well, you convinced me. And I must say, I said this last week, but the PC version is cracking. You can always say that about a PC version when you've got like a £9 billion computer, but for my mid to, it's probably about mid-range now. I've had it a couple of years, and it runs like a dream on the highest settings, so good on them.
Have you got a game? Have you got like a headset
for the PC?
just like a gaming headset that you could play it on with sort of surround sound in your head.
Oh yeah, that's what I play all my games on all the time.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's got a mic on it as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the perfect way to play Alien, needless to say, because
definitely.
I think I said this to you. Another brilliant thing about the game is that you kept saying, "Oh, this keeps happening. This keeps happening." That's annoying at first, but you start recognizing the noise of when it's about to fall out of the ceiling, and the noise when it's jumped back up and you're safe. You have to learn what it's doing. You have to learn its behavior. It's
right.
It's really rewarding. I love it. But yeah. Make sure you find the time at some point.
Yeah, I will try to. I will definitely try to. But it might even end up being next year the way things are going. But it's not going anywhere. I want to do it.
Good.
All right, so that was our threes. My number 2 is The Evil Within. What's your number 2?
The Evil Within.
Perfect. Well, you can go first this time.
Okay, I'm about 6 hours in, and I guess I'll get the bad stuff out of the way first. The animation is very stiff, and the visuals are really washed out quite a lot of the time on Xbox One. It definitely feels like a 360 stroke PS3 sort of spruce up rather than something you need to play on PS4 or Xbox One. So as with the recent Sherlock Holmes games, I'd say save yourself a few quid and go with the last gen version, probably. But however you choose to play it, I don't think it's a very visually interesting game anyway. I'm not even halfway through though, so who knows? But it's so washed out that, I mean, for example, there's an entire level that's so drab. It's not even black and white. It's basically grey. And on the whole, it's quite murky, and I just think visually uninteresting.
Really? Because I thought it looked pretty damn awesome, to be honest, on PS4.
Hey, maybe there's a massive discrepancy there.
I mean, I really don't know, but I just thought it was really rich and cinematic, and the lighting was incredible. It was the frame rate. The frame rate's not very good.
Okay, the lighting is definitely. I mean, especially in the opening hour, but it's also got one problem that I found very frustrating is that it's got really old-fashioned canned animations which have just stitched me up on several occasions. You can basically attack and be attacked the millisecond that an animation finishes, so you can get up after being knocked down while an enemy's swinging at you, and if it's the wrong second and the sort of impact is while you're still, just as you end that animation, straight back down again.
Yeah.
And there's also an enemy, a boss, who can kill you in one hit. And I ran up and swung at her as she spawned, and it was a fraction of a second early. So I finished my attack move, and then boom, dead straight away. So it's very old fashioned. You learn to work around those animations, but it's not brilliant. Also, it's worth keeping a couple of save files. Just because you can change the difficulty down but not back up, and I reached a point where I just kept dying over and over again. I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to try and see what it's like on the easy difficulty. I knocked it down to check what the differences were, and I quickly realised it was a far lesser game on easy, inevitably. Enemies are obviously less powerful, so the stealth bits have no bite to them. There's no tension. But the thing that really sold it for me is that I screwed up dismantling one of those proximity bombs. Twice. There's a very simple QTE to dismantle these. It's quite hard, but I screwed it up twice, and when I spawned for a third time, it wasn't there anymore. So I was just like, I'm not doing this. This is too easy. So I knocked it. I wanted to knock it back up to hard, and I couldn't do that. So luckily, I kept sort of bouncing between two saves, so I could go back and continue from there. So I think that's worth doing. There's nothing original about it. It looks a little bit like 7, and then it looks a bit like Saw, and then it looks a bit like Resident Evil 4. And the bottom line, I think, as everyone has already said, it's what Resident Evil 5 would have been if Capcom didn't start trying to turn that series into Call of Duty. Yeah. I think how you'll feel about this game is how you feel about the prospect of playing Resident Evil 4 again. Because I played Resident Evil 4, I've lost track. I mean, I played it at least 3 times on the Wii, several more on the Cube, and I've always had plans to go and play that terrible 360 port. So I was more than up for this. If you think that game's dated or it's aged poorly, you might not warm to this so much, but I am really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm 6 hours in and I'm really liking it. I loved the opening. I thought it started brilliantly. Yeah. There's real threat in the beginning, and that's actually true of quite large stretches of what I've played so far. You almost play it on tiptoes because you really don't want to get discovered. And I think that's partially because there are none of those superhero tricks that the current round of stealth games have. I kept, in the beginning, wanting to be able to look through walls, because in most games, stealth games, quote unquote, these days you can. And that would obviously rob all the tension of it. But yeah, it's Resident Evil 4.5. Although the upgrade system's straight out of Shadows of the Damned, and the sort of slow motion inventory menu thing is a bit like the one in Vanquish. And yeah, I'm really liking it. There's no story. It's like playing a dream. It's just weird shit that keeps happening. It doesn't need to be explained because you're clearly playing an insane person, and I don't mind that. There's no nonsense cutscenes to contend with. It's just weird shit happening the whole time. My issue with it at this point is that I'm starting to worry that I don't know whether it's going to be able to keep working this well, but if it keeps flitting between stealth and action. I would have preferred it if it was 100% stealth. I think the stealth bits are the best bit of the game, and it's not jarring at this point, but I think it might become jarring, running around and blasting enemies while suddenly have to avoid deadly traps. That's just one problem that I can see arising. But it's a little bit buggy, but it saves regularly, and there are manual save points too. So it's definitely imperfect, but I'm enjoying it more than enough to overlook those problems. I'm really liking it so far. What do you reckon?
I've played less than you, probably maybe 3.5 hours, I'd say, something like that. And I've basically loved every minute of it, but I will preface that by saying that I'm probably a little bit overly forgiving of Shinji Mikami's stuff anyway. Even the bits, like early on, the opening's amazing, but there is one kind of annoying bit at the beginning of the game where I got killed about 10 times in a row, and I just forgave it instantly because of his track record, whereas in many games I wouldn't have. I don't think it would have.
Which bit was? Where was that?
Just getting there's this kind of a stealth room early on with a chainsaw guy, and you have to get through it. And I just kept getting seen in ways that I didn't think that I was getting seen, and I hadn't really got my head around how the game was working at that point anyway. And it was just I've seen it. It's been a sticking point for a few people, but I was just like, whatever. You've earned the right to annoy me ever so slightly. It's not a problem. I think I fell in love with it, though, and it may still upset me later on, and I might not end up liking it as much as I am right now, but I was doing, I think it was on the second or third mission, maybe the second one, creeping through the grass, trying to sneak up on some enemies, and they are basically the enemies from Resident Evil 4. They're the same, but just kind of more sort of S&M body horror type thing going on there. But yeah, they are just those guys. And then I got rumbled, and I had 2 bullets in my gun, and the enemy came for me with this fucking pitchfork, whatever it was, a torch or something, and I just managed to just get my gun out just in time, and went bam, and his head just exploded in one shot, and it felt like all the best headshots from Resi 4, and I was like, yes. And I've loved all the action parts that I've played since. I loved the feel of the combat. I love the weird crossbow that you get where you're dismantling the traps in the world and then turning those into crossbow bolts, and it's just, I mean, it is a Resident Evil game, well, and a new Resident Evil game. It is the new Resident Evil 4. That's just what it is. But probably, I think you feel more vulnerable than you ever did in Resi 4. You can't go up and just like flying knee and roundhouse kick people in the face like you can with Leon. And I always felt, in the time that I played so far anyway, I've definitely felt like the threat, like you said, is higher than it perhaps was in that game. But I also really like the way it looks, but that might be a console thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, who knows on that one. But there was one more thing that I was going to say about the game that's slipping my mind. Oh yeah, of course. So it's so crammed, even in the early stages. It's so crammed full of references to his previous games and the Resident Evil games in particular. It's insane. I mean, it's almost like every scene has a Resident Evil reference in it. And I was just sat there and I was like, that's funny. And then I just remembered it's called The Evil Within. And I was like, is that why it's called that? Was that just like a clever name that you've called it? That it is basically just it's like your greatest hits. It's like Mikami's greatest hits. This Resident Evil, all the different Resident Evil things. Like, they're exact cutscenes that are direct lists from the first Resident Evil game. Like, there's a bit where a dead body, the crows come off it, which is exactly the same as a thing in the first one. I was obsessed with the first Resident Evil, and I was like, I remember when it was first announced and they had the demo on the official PlayStation magazine. I bought it on my 14th birthday. I was upset. I mean, that game I played to death, up, down, left and right. Just played rooms over and over and over again on that game. So maybe some of those references might not be as clear to someone who wasn't quite such a nerd for that one. But yeah, I'm just loving it. It's Mikami. That guy's track record is absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely has a lower budget, and I think it's far scrappier than most of his stuff. But it's really, when it works, it really works brilliantly. I'm going to be interested to see which direction it's going to go in, because it's about 50-50. It's kind of the stealth stuff and then the action stuff. I'd much rather it was just if they kept the stealth. I think, but I don't know.
But yeah, I much prefer the action. I could kind of do without the stealth, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I've played a lot of stealth recently. I want to shoot those guys. It's so fun.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've definitely got action stuff to come, but what it does after that, I'll be interested to see where it goes. But I'm really enjoying it so far. Yeah. Yeah,
me too. Definitely. That's the one I want to go back to more than anything else. I just want to get through it. It's just there's something about this, like, even a sense, like, it's a nasty game so far, but it's sort of got a sense of humour to it as well. It reminded me at times of the kind of way Drag Me to Hell, the film, is a scary film, but it's a scary film that makes you laugh, and this game is kind of making me laugh. That guy just seems to, I said it, he's inside my brain. All the stuff that I like, he just makes games about them. I don't know what it is. I'd love to exactly put my finger on it, because it's not even a subject matter. I'm not big on zombies or anything like that, or any body horrors, nothing. I don't know what it is, but yeah. The fact that he was the guy that made God Hand, and that's, I mean, we're talking about Gang Beasts being the inside of my brain. That's the other part that's inside of my brain. Yeah, God Hand. So yeah, this guy's mustard. And he made PNO3, a game I've never played, that he always says one of the best games ever.
That's one of those games that everyone dismissed, and you just like sit down and play it again. It's brilliant. PNO3 properly. I've been championing that thing for fucking years. And
yeah, I know.
I'd love to play a HD remake of it, but that will never happen because no one played the orig.
No.
It's a tremendous game. But yeah, Evil Within, very enjoyable so far. Talk about it next week, no doubt.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, my number one is NBA 2K15 on the Xbox One. It's definitely my number one. What am I talking about? I was about to say I thought it should have been my number two, but it's definitely my number one. Where to begin? First off, the presentation is as amazing as ever. It's just unbelievable. These games are just incredible visually. The NBA series, the 2K series, puts every other sports game to shame. And this one is it's amazing to behold. It's kind of structured like this kind of multimedia hub. There's little video interviews and footage playing here and there. And my favourite thing about this year's game is that you can bounce from the main menu straight to a map of the US. You can see where NBA games are due to happen over the next few days. Click one, pick a side, and then you're playing it. Wow. Excellent. I don't know anything about basketball, but that's just cool. One thing I should say, certainly about this game, is that it is the least accessible NBA 2K game in history because they have ditched tutorials. And I think, I say arguably, but I don't think there's much to argue. I think this is the most complex sports game in history. It's a game where if you just in this version of the game, if you just want to check how to perform a certain move, there are 4 sub-menus, each of about 4 pages, just walls of text.
Right.
And if you're not a basketball fan, most of it is complete gibberish because if you like the idea of basketball and you buy this game and you're not a massive fan of the sport, you don't know what a hop gather is or a hop step layup is. It's just walls of text that many people, myself included, a little bit, because I needed to brush up and had to consult Google in the end instead, because I play them every year but only for a short window of time, and I'm not a basketball fanatic, so all of this terminology, if you're trying to learn the ropes, is just gibberish. So the game basically says fuck you to anyone who hasn't played one of these games before, which I don't think is particularly clever. There are a handful of short video tutorials in inverted commas that again aren't particularly helpful because they're aimed only at the hardcore audience, because you can play the entire game almost without using buttons. You can do almost every move on the right stick, but that takes a lot of getting used to. And these videos are very abrupt, very dry, and they've done something that I just think is mental. They've taken some of the NBA players who are affiliated with the game. They're in the menu being interviewed, and they're on the box and stuff, and they've gotten them to do voiceovers for these tutorial videos. And I'm just like, when you're trying to make sense of these kind of snippy and hard to digest little clips, the last thing you need is hold down on the right stick to faint. Go to ride stage and do a double play. All your dreams come true in NBA 2K15. Rise to the top, come back here for mods. So I can comfortably say that paying those players to do that was a waste of fucking money. Put them on the box, fine. But unless they've actually become pundits, like Shaquille O'Neal is in the game also doing punditry. He sits right behind a desk and it's pretty good. He's quite funny. He seems, I mean, because I'm sure he's doing that in the States now as a job. But those other guys, it just makes a bad situation worse because those tutorial videos are hard work anyway. It's just. Can you imagine? You're gonna have to follow this up with an impression because could you imagine if you put in FIFA 16 and the main menu comes up and they were narrated by the England coach, the England manager? So hold on.
Roy Hodgson.
Roy Hodgson. So imagine the scene. You've taken the shrink wrap off your copy of FIFA 16. You've put it in the Xbox One. It's taken 8 years to install, and then FIFA 16 main menu.
Well, just use the right stick to just do a step over, and then we'll see how it goes. So okay, I thought they did it right. So
it doesn't make any sense.
On to the next one.
Could you imagine? It doesn't work. I mean, I don't know. That's a crazy decision. I mean, imagine an F1 game where it's like fucking Nigel Mansell, get ready for all the thrills and spills of Formula One. It doesn't. It's crazy. I don't know why they've done that. But anyway, aside from that,
I think all games should have it now. Change your mind.
I mean, you can understand it. Like the last F1 game, they paid a load of money to Murray Walker to come and do the some of those things, but. That guy's like the soundtrack to my childhood because every Saturday Formula One's on. Not every Saturday, obviously, but you know he makes it feel like a more authentic experience because he talks about the sport. These guys just fucking monotonously go and do this, do that. He's like, you could have saved a lot of money. But yeah, anyway, aside from that stupid shit, and provided you've played one of these games, the best thing about this year's game is that the campaign is brilliant. And that's because it's taken a tack very similar to Fight Night Champion, which is a game I don't know why Fight Night Champion hasn't been ripped off by every sports game. Because if you haven't played it, it's basically you're participating in a film. And there's long and expensive looking cutscenes. It's actually a story mode and it works. You know, the previous systems are still here, so there are dialogue options, so you can be really career obsessed. Or you can be a team player, you know, and it's only usually it's two options, but it's still fascinating to see how they affect the game going through it. I don't know why all sports games don't have modes like this, the sort of rags to riches tale. It's really great, and it's doubly good in this case because if you're a bit rusty at the game like I am, your character learns and improves along with you, so you improve at the game as your character does, and it just makes it feel really good. Really, the mode is terrific. I think that's a runaway success. There's still my team, which is Ultimate Team, and that's still great fun, even though I don't have a fucking clue who any of those guys are. But then I don't really know who any of the people in FIFA are either. And the online community mode, My Park, where you kind of wander around gathering players and getting into games, is really compelling now because you can gamble in-game currency on your team. The currency is a little bit scarce in the game. It's a little bit like Ultimate Team. Yeah, there's just, you know, there are microtransactions if you want them, and that's a bit of a shame. It's not too oppressive, but it shouldn't be there. But it's so compelling being able to go and find a bunch of people and then gambling on yourself when you're skint to try and win some money. You play that game online on the edge of your fucking seat. It's probably not a great thing to know that there's gambling in the game, but at least it's not for real money. In terms of the stuff on the court, there's a really great new shot meter. It's like a round circular meter that gauges where you perform best. So if you do anything out of character, if you're prone to sort of taking long shots or shooting from a particular area, if you move out of that area, that shot's harder to pull off, which means that you can't rely on the same old tricks. You can't just keep playing each. You know, you have to master more than one player, and use their skills together. Defending is unbelievably difficult at first as well. I saw a lot of complaints online about this because it's really hard. It's very much like tactical defending in FIFA. So the animations, if you fluff a defensive play, you're just completely out of luck because that's like a full second of you fluffing something. So it's far harder to defend, but it's a damn shame that the people who made this game seem to have forgotten that newcomers might pick it up. But that aside, it's another stunning NBA 2K game. they always smash it. I mean, admittedly, I don't play this as much as FIFA, so I can't really judge whether the online side of it goes as terribly to pot as it does in FIFA, but I know some people also have had problems online. I haven't had any problems online, amazingly. So hopefully they've been fixed. I played it a few days after launch, so hopefully the launch problems have sort of evaporated now. But this is an extremely fine game, provided you've played one of them before, because otherwise you are fucked. I mean, these games are amazingly good.
They are.
So I recommend getting it, but I won't play it for very long because I don't know anyone that plays it. And yeah, what can you do?
Yeah, I'll be playing it for next week, for definite. So.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
Which format?
PC, in fact.
Oh, feck.
Yeah.
You can't even have a game.
No, I know. But I mean, they've always have been ever since the first one, 2K. They've always been outstanding.
They make the FIFA games look fucking ridiculously shit.
They do. Yeah. And it looks amazing on Xbox One, I assume.
It does. I mean, it looks like television. It's like the last few games. I mean, even the ones on 360. Just like they made the little tricks they create to make it look like TV. Now they've got the pundits halfway through, and it's next level. It's so good.
Yeah.
I wish I knew everyone I knew had this game so I could play it all year round, because it's just so good.
Awesome. Okay then, my number one is Borderlands The Pre Sequel on Xbox 360. In the middle of the review process for this at the moment, and weirdly, I think I'm enjoying it more than the other two, but that's kind of a unique case with me, a guy who didn't massively get on with either of the other two. Just their sprawling scope kind of got to me in the end, and I didn't have the opportunity to play either of them really on co-op. Whereas this, it's actually made by 2K Australia as opposed to Gearbox themselves, and it feels like it's a more, well, I mean, I've been playing a good few hours now, and it feels like it works better on your own. Not better on your own, but better than the other games do on your own, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It feels like it's less preoccupied with offering you the world and a billion different things you can go and do in big sprawling areas, even though there is that kind of, and more, it feels like you're not losing out just by playing through the story. And I'm actually really liking it so far. The action takes place on a moon, one of Pandora's moons, and the gag being that it's like our moon, the gravity's low, so you can jump really, really far, and so can the enemies, and you actually get a piece of kit very early on that allows you to kind of boost while you're jumping, and you can also press a button to slam down to the ground, like you're going to be able to in the new Call of Duty, but it's a lot more like Buzz Aldrin than COD. It's very slow and smooth, and the enemies are all sort of flying in from high and trying to do that stuff. And it just creates a kind of new style of combat for Borderlands, a game where I never thought the combat was that strong. That was certainly probably the weakest aspect of the other games, I thought. And it's better here. It's still like, I mean, coming from Destiny, which is a very similar game in many ways, and has peerless combat, you know, it is a marked step down here. As much fun as it is still to shoot things and get all the loot, that remains intact. I've read things about the game that it's a bit lacking compared to Borderlands 2 in terms of new assets, just a kind of sense of new. But having not spent hours and hours on Borderlands 2, it's not something that's bothered me at all. And because it's made by 2K Australia, I must give Joe Screbbles from OXM credit for this, because his reviews pinned all around this fact. So I would have probably thought of it anyway, but I must give him credit. It's the entire game is basically completely Australian. I love the fact that they've done this. It's been made in Australia, so they've just decided that this moon, where the game takes place, is Australia. I mean, it doesn't look like Australia, but every fucker in it's Australian. So it's just a bunch of Aussies. Everybody's an Aussie. And it's not like English developers trying to do Australian accents, like I'm not going to attempt now. It's actual Aussies doing Aussie stuff and speaking. It sounds natural and good. And, you know, the humour's always decent in Borderlands. I don't think they're hilarious or anything, but they're always, there's a sense that, a kind of anarchic sense of humour here. And I actually think this is funnier than the other ones. It's way less grating to me. So, yeah, it's a kind of weird, like it's fun. I mean, it's really starting to look a little dated in some ways now on the old tech. That art style is very low detail, and obviously you're dealing with the older consoles. It's not out on next gen, But then again, on the flip side of that, like the skyboxes on the moon, you can see the planet and shit like that. That all looks really cool, and things like that. There's some odd decisions, like when you're out in the open, you need oxygen, but you get this helmet that gives you like a bar of oxygen, and that depletes. And if you want to boost and stuff, it depletes further, and then you have to kind of run to areas where there's like little geysers that come out of the ground where you can recharge your oxygen. It's not been a problem yet, but it's kind of like a swimming level in some ways, and you have to go between bubbles in a swimming level. It's not as you can spend quite a long time without oxygen, without topping up, I should say, and it's not as urgent as like a Donkey Kong swimming level or something, but or Sonic swimming level, whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, that might end up proving irritating. It's already starting to get a little bit tiresome. It's kind of like, all right, it just seems like restricting fun for no reason. I don't really understand why they've chosen to do it. It doesn't add anything to the game. I think it only detracts. But it just seems like restricting fun for no reason. I don't really understand what it adds to the game. It's not a massive problem or anything like that. It really isn't. But it's just an odd one. But maybe if you stripped it out, I would miss it straight away. Like when you turn down that other game to easy, and suddenly you realise that you've lost so much. So who knows? And yeah, just overall, I think it's really solid. It exists purely in many ways as just a box ticker. They needed a Borderlands game because that series has become so successful. They didn't want to wait until the next gen one that they're clearly obviously working on to come out, and however long that'll take. So it's just a stopgap. But for a stopgap, it introduces entirely new mechanics, has a different flow to the combat than either of the games, and has its own personality, like this kind of Aussie vibe to it, which is reasonably amusing. It's not a world beater. I wouldn't necessarily switch off Destiny if you're still really into that to move to this by any stretch, but I don't know, if you're Borderlands enough, and God knows there's enough of them, I think 2 did 10 million or something like that, I don't think you'll be massively disappointed, but then maybe you will, and maybe it's the guy that didn't really like the first 2 Borderlands that's getting on with this more streamlined one, so who knows.
So, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Are people going to leave Destiny to come back to this?
I think only those who love Borderlands or have already cleaned out Destiny until the expansions come out. People with no jobs or who've done the raid and twice, done all the strikes, done every level 10 times. Maybe they need more loot and shoot, but who knows? I given a choice, I'd be Destiny all day, obviously. The combat's just a completely different class. Yeah.
Is Handsome Jack in it loads?
Yeah. He kind of sets you off. No, he's not in it. I don't think he's even as much as in it in 2, to be honest. Huh. He's in it a lot at the beginning, and then you kind of off with some different characters after that, and he does pop up from here and there. But yeah, the story's centered around him, but is he actually in it that much? Not massively.
It's weird because I always just thought that was the best character they'd ever created in the Borderlands game. And when I wrote an article for a publication ages ago, what do we want to see in Borderlands 3? And I was just like, you have to bring back Captain Jack, Handsome Jack. So it doesn't surprise me that they found a way to resurrect him. I just didn't know whether it was going to be too much, or whether it was going to be whether he was going to be used quite sparingly. But so it's good then.
I think it is. Yeah, it's not incredible. I can imagine me ending up at about a 7, but a good, good 7. Good, you know how that is. Not a disappointing 7.
Yarp.
Yarp.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'll play. I mean, I have a couple of friends who are fans of Borderlands, but they are far bigger fans of Destiny these days. Okay, all right. Well, that's interesting. Well, that is us done. A short episode. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, the usual shit. Check us out on Twitter at John Denton, at Chet Roivers, at Chet and Johns, Facebook, YouTube. There's stuff on YouTube. You should check that out. And I think that's it. If you want to have a laugh, oh god, I can't remember the name of it. No point. There's that hilarious viral video of the travel company that went sort of blew up last week.
Fuck you.
I can't remember the pointless. I can't remember the name of the fucking company. So you can't even look at. But John's in that advert. I don't know. Why did I speak? Forget about it.
You've let yourself down there a little bit.
I really have.
All right. Yeah. Thanks very much for listening. should be back next week with a longer episode. But yeah, we shall see. Because goodness me, there's a lot of games at the moment.
Yeah, true that.
Laters.
Goodbye.
Hello, netball fans. East versus West Germany. Who is better out of that Cold War nightmare? Owen Wilson gives the traditional low fives before starting off. He passes it to James. That's a surname in America. James passes it to Anthony. That's also a surname. And he goes for a shot. And it's missing. You'd have thought that they'd get it in every time, but that's why basketball's so exciting, apparently. He scores! 2-0. That's your first points there. Don't worry, fans, if you missed that one, there'll be plenty more, I would imagine. Like this one, he's coming up. He's going to score it. He does score it. But no, someone's on the floor. It's a... Well, the defence just let him have that one. They were wide open. 4-0. I don't know how he scored 2 in that one, but he did. How are they going to come back like that? I thought that it was an insurmountable lead, but it wasn't. Oh, my God, the clock's going down. Everything's going to explode. No, it didn't. False alarm. It was just a pointless timer. And what's happened there? Everyone stopped. Handshakes all round because it was a good foul.